how to become your own biggest fan. Step 1. Attention, the mirror that changed everything. The most important relationship you will ever have. Imagine standing in front of a mirror right now, looking directly into your own eyes. What do you see? More importantly, what do you say to that person staring back at you? If you are like 85% of people worldwide, according to recent psychological studies, the words you speak to that reflection are harsher, more critical, and more unforgiving than anything you would ever say to another human being. Today, we're going to transform that relationship, the relationship with yourself, because it is the foundation upon which every other success, every other relationship, and every other achievement in your life is built. Welcome to the most important conversation you will ever have about becoming your own biggest fan, your own strongest supporter, and your own most powerful ally in the journey of life. Let me share a profound truth that will revolutionize your existence. The voice in your head, your internal narrator, has more power over your destiny than any external force, any circumstance, or any other person in your life. That voice can either be your greatest champion, pushing you toward your dreams with encouragement and belief, or it can be your worst enemy, sabotaging every opportunity with doubt, criticism, and fear. Today, we're going to consciously choose to transform that voice from critic to coach, from enemy to ally, from destroyer to builder. This isn't about ego or arrogance. It's about giving yourself the same compassion, encouragement, and support that you would naturally give to someone you deeply love. Consider this staggering reality. You will spend more time with yourself than with any other person in your entire life. You are there for every moment of your existence. Every triumph, every failure, every mundane Tuesday, every glorious breakthrough. Yet most people treat strangers with more kindness than they treat themselves. They would never speak to a friend the way they speak to themselves in the privacy of their own minds. They would never tolerate someone else criticizing them the way they criticize themselves. This self-abandonment, this internal civil war, is the root cause of more failed dreams, abandoned goals, and unfulfilled potential than all external obstacles combined. The concept of becoming your own biggest fan has been demonstrated by every person who has achieved extraordinary success. Muhammad Ali didn't wait for the world to call him the greatest. He declared it himself repeatedly until his self-belief became so powerful that it manifested into reality. He would stand in front of mirrors for hours, telling himself he was the greatest boxer who ever lived, even before he had won a professional fight. This wasn't delusion, it was deliberate mental conditioning. He understood that external victory begins with internal conviction. When reporters asked him how he became so confident, he replied, "I figured that if I said it enough, I would convince the world. But first, I had to convince the man in the mirror." The hidden epidemic of self-betrayal. We are living in the midst of a silent epidemic that's destroying more lives than any disease, addiction, or external catastrophe. The epidemic of self-betrayal. Every day, millions of people wake up and immediately begin a mental assault on themselves. You're not good enough. You are too fat. You are too thin. You're not smart enough. You're a failure. You'll never amount to anything. Why did you say that stupid thing yesterday? Why can't you be more like them? This internal terrorism is so normalized that we don't even recognize it as abnormal. We think self-criticism is humility. We believe self-doubt is wisdom. We mistake self-hatred for self-improvement. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating and frightening. Every time you criticize yourself, your brain releases cortisol and other stress hormones, putting your body into a state of threat response. Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, cannot distinguish between a physical threat and psychological self-attack. This means that when you call yourself an idiot, your body responds as if someone else is attacking you. You are literally putting yourself into fight or flight mode multiple times a day through your own thoughts. This chronic state of internal stress leads to decreased immune function, impaired decision making, reduced creativity, and increased risk of anxiety and depression. But here's what makes this even more tragic. We've been conditioned to believe that being hard on ourselves is necessary for success. We think self-criticism motivates us to do better. We believe that if we're not constantly pushing ourselves with harsh internal dialogue, we'll become lazy or complacent. This is one of the greatest lies ever perpetrated on human consciousness. Research consistently shows that people who practice self-compassion and positive self-regard are more successful, more motivated, and more resilient than those who motivate themselves through self-criticism. They recover faster from setbacks, take more calculated risks, and achieve their goals more consistently. The Bible addresses this profound truth in Mark 12:31, when Jesus says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Notice the assumption in this commandment that you already love yourself. It doesn't say love your neighbor instead of yourself or more than yourself. It assumes self-love as the baseline from which other love flows. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot love others well if you don't love yourself well. The command isn't to diminish yourself, but to extend to others the same care, respect, and love you have for yourself. But what happens when you don't have that self-love? What happens when you're your own worst enemy? You become incapable of truly loving others because you're trying to give from an empty well. The turning point that changes everything. Today marks your turning point. Today is the day you stop being your own worst critic and start becoming your own biggest fan. This isn't about becoming delusional or ignoring areas where you need to grow. It's about approaching yourself with the same wisdom, encouragement, and support you would offer to someone you are genuinely rooting for. It's about recognizing that you can acknowledge areas for improvement while still being fundamentally on your own side. It's about understanding that self-support doesn't prevent growth. It accelerates it. Think about Oprah Winfrey's journey. Born into poverty, sexually abused, told she was unfit for television because she was too emotional, too black, too female for 1970s media. She had every reason to internalize the world's criticism. But instead, she became her own biggest fan. She would practice positive self-talk, write gratitude journals, and constantly remind herself of her worth and potential. She didn't wait for the world to validate her. She validated herself first. She often shares how she would look in the mirror and say, "You are worthy, you are capable, you are enough." This self-support didn't make her complacent. It gave her the strength to revolutionize media and become one of the most influential people on the planet. Step 2, need The crisis cost of not being your own fan. The compound destruction of self-criticism. Let's confront the devastating cost of not being your own biggest fan. Every day you spend as your own critic rather than your own champion, you are not just having a bad day, you are compounding destruction that affects every area of your life. Self-criticism doesn't exist in isolation. It metastasizes like cancer, spreading from one area of your life to all areas. The person who criticizes themselves professionally begins to doubt themselves personally. The individual who questions their worth in relationships starts to sabotage their health. The self-doubt you feel in one arena becomes self-destruction in another. Consider the mathematical reality of compound self-criticism. If you have approximately 60,000 thoughts per day, as research suggests, and 80% of them are negative for the average person, that's 48,000 negative thoughts daily. Over a year, that's 17.5 million negative thoughts. Over a decade, that's 175 million instances of self-attack. Can you imagine if someone else criticized you 175 million times? You would consider it abuse. You would seek protection. You would recognize it as destructive. Yet we do this to ourselves and call it normal. We engage in psychological self-abuse and wonder why we feel depleted, depressed, and defeated. The opportunity cost is even more staggering. Every moment you spend tearing yourself down is a moment you could have spent building yourself up. Every ounce of energy you expend on self-criticism is energy stolen from creativity, productivity, and possibility. Imagine two versions of yourself. One spends an hour daily in self-criticism. The other spends that same hour in self-encouragement and planning. Over a year, that's 365 hours. More than 2 full weeks. The self-critical version has spent 2 weeks destroying, while the self-supporting version has spent 2 weeks building. Over a lifetime, this difference compounds into 2 completely different destinies. The story of King Saul in the Bible perfectly illustrates the destructive power of not being your own fan. After David's victory over Goliath, when the people sang, "Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands," Saul could have chosen to be his own biggest fan, secure in his own achievements and calling. Instead, he became consumed with comparison and self-criticism. His inability to support himself, to be secure in his own worth, led to paranoia, violence, and ultimately his destruction. He lost his kingdom, his sanity, and his life, not because of external enemies, but because he became his own worst enemy. The relationship destruction pattern. When you are not your own biggest fan, you unconsciously sabotage every relationship in your life. Here's why. You cannot accept from others what you don't believe about yourself. If someone compliments you but you don't believe you are worthy of compliments, you'll dismiss it, deflect it, or decide they are lying. If someone loves you but you don't love yourself, you'll eventually push them away because their love feels like a lie you can't sustain. You will attract people who confirm your negative self-belief and repel people who see your true worth. This creates what psychologists call confirmation bias in relationships. When you are not your own fan, you hyper-focus on any criticism and dismiss any praise. Someone could give you 9 compliments and 1 piece of constructive feedback, and you'll obsess over the feedback while forgetting the compliments. You'll replay rejection on an endless loop while minimizing acceptance. You'll remember every failure in vivid detail while forgetting your successes. This distorted perception creates a reality where you're always failing, always falling short, always unworthy. Not because it's true, but because that's all you allow yourself to see. Furthermore, when you are not your own biggest fan, you become emotionally dependent on others for validation, creating unhealthy, codependent relationships. You need constant reassurance, which exhausts those around you. You interpret neutral actions as rejection. You read criticism into innocent comments. You become a black hole of need that no amount of external validation can fill, because the leak is internal. Until you become your own source of support and validation, you'll always be at the mercy of others' opinions, moods, and availability. Jesus addressed this when he said, "First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." While this is often interpreted as being about hypocrisy, it's also about self-work preceding healthy relationships with others. The plank in your eye might be self-criticism that distorts how you see everything else. When you're not your own fan, you project your self-rejection onto others. You assume they are judging you because you're judging yourself. You can't see their love clearly because you're looking through the lens of self-hatred. The success sabotage syndrome, perhaps the most insidious effects of not being your own biggest fan, is how it sabotages success even when it comes. This phenomenon is so common, it has a name: imposter syndrome. When you achieve something significant but you're not your own fan, instead of celebrating, you panic. You believe it's a fluke, a mistake, that you'll be found out. You minimize your role in your success while maximizing external factors. "I just got lucky. Anyone could have done it. It wasn't that big a deal." This self-sabotage doesn't just minimize past success, it prevents future success. When you're not your own fan, you don't apply for the promotion because you don't believe you deserve it. You don't start the business because you don't trust yourself to succeed. You don't pursue the relationship because you don't believe you are worthy of love. You don't share your art because you don't believe it has value. You pre-reject yourself, saving others the trouble. You become your own glass ceiling, your own closed door, your own no, before the world even has a chance to say yes. The tragic story of Judas Iscariot illustrates the ultimate consequence of not being your own fan. After betraying Jesus, Judas was consumed with self-condemnation. He couldn't forgive himself, couldn't extend to himself the grace that Jesus would have extended to him. His inability to be his own fan, to support himself through failure, to believe in his own possibility for redemption, led him to suicide. Compare this to Peter, who also betrayed Jesus by denying him 3 times. Peter became his own fan in the sense of accepting forgiveness and believing in his capacity for restoration. The difference between Judas and Peter wasn't the magnitude of their betrayal, but their ability to support themselves through failure. The generational curse of self-criticism. When you are not your own biggest fan, you don't just affect your life. You infect the lives of those around you, especially your children. Children don't learn from what you say. They learn from what you model. When they see you criticizing yourself, dismissing your achievements, and treating yourself harshly, they internalize this as normal. They learn that self-criticism is how you motivate yourself. They absorb the belief that they are not worthy of their own support. You pass down a generational curse of self-rejection that can persist for decades. Studies show that parents who practice positive self-talk and self-compassion raise children with higher self-esteem, greater resilience, and better mental health. Conversely, parents who are consistently self-critical raise children who are anxious, perfectionist, and prone to depression. Your relationship with yourself becomes the template for your children's relationship with themselves. When you refuse to be your own fan, you are teaching your children to be their own critics. This generational impact extends beyond direct family. As a leader, teacher, mentor, or friend, your self-relationship influences everyone in your sphere. When you're not your own fan, you unconsciously give others permission to not be their own fans. You normalize self-rejection. You make self-criticism seem like wisdom. You perpetuate a culture where people tear themselves down in the name of humility or growth. But when you become your own biggest fan, you give others permission to do the same. You model a different way of being. You show that it's possible to be both self-supporting and constantly growing. Step 3, satisfaction, the solution of self-championship, the revolutionary practice of self-celebration. The solution begins with a revolutionary practice that will feel uncomfortable at first. Deliberate self-celebration. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or delusional about your abilities. It means actively acknowledging your efforts, progress, and achievements with the same enthusiasm you would show for a friend. When you complete a task, instead of immediately moving to the next one, pause and acknowledge what you just accomplished. When you overcome a challenge, instead of minimizing it, celebrate the strength it took. When you make progress, no matter how small, recognize it as movement in the right direction. Create what I call a victory inventory, a dedicated journal or digital document where you record every achievement, breakthrough, and positive step. Include everything: the difficult conversation you had, the healthy choice you made, the fear you faced, the skill you learned. Most people can recall their failures in vivid detail, but struggle to remember their successes. This victory inventory becomes your evidence file, proof of your capability when self-doubt creeps in. Review it regularly, especially when you are struggling. Let your past victories remind you of your capacity for future victories. Look at how Serena Williams practices self-celebration. After winning a point, she pumps her fist and yells, "Come on!" She's not waiting for the crowd to celebrate her. She's being her own biggest fan in real time. But here's what most people don't see. She does this in practice too. When no one's watching, she celebrates good serves in training. She acknowledges her effort in conditioning. She's constantly reinforcing her success to herself. This isn't arrogance, it's strategic mental conditioning. By being her own biggest fan consistently, she's built an unshakable belief in her capability that has made her one of the greatest athletes of all time. The biblical example of David writing the Psalms shows us ancient wisdom about self-celebration in partnership with divine gratitude. David would write about his victories, his strengths, his overcoming of enemies. "The Lord has dealt bountifully with me. He trains my hands for war. my fingers for battle. I pursued my enemies and overtook them. David wasn't being prideful. He was documenting and celebrating his journey, recognizing both divine empowerment and personal achievement. He was his own historian, his own cheerleader, his own fan, and this practice sustained him through decades of challenges. The neuroscience of self-support. Understanding the science behind becoming your own biggest fan makes the practice more compelling. When you engage in positive self-talk and self-celebration, your brain releases dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, the same chemicals released when someone else praises you. But here's the powerful part. Self-generated positive emotions are more sustainable than externally triggered ones because you control the supply. You don't have to wait for someone else to make you feel good about yourself. You can create that feeling yourself. Neuroplasticity research shows that your brain physically changes based on repeated thought patterns. When you consistently practice being your own fan, you are literally rewiring your neural pathways. The self-criticism highway in your brain begins to deteriorate from lack of use, while the self-support pathway becomes stronger and more automatic. This isn't wishful thinking. It's measurable biological change. Brain scans show increased activity in regions associated with emotional regulation and decreased activity in areas associated with anxiety and depression when people practice self-compassion and positive self-regard. The practice of affirmations, often dismissed as woo-woo, is actually grounded in neuroscience. When you repeatedly tell yourself positive truths, I am capable, I am worthy, I am improving, your reticular activating system, RAS, begins to filter reality to find evidence supporting these beliefs. Your brain starts noticing your capabilities, your progress, your wins. It's not that affirmations magically change reality. They change what you notice about reality. And what you notice becomes your experienced reality. Will Smith attributes much of his success to this practice. From a young age, he would tell himself, I am the greatest actor in the world. I am the biggest movie star in the world. He would say this when he was an unknown rapper, when he was on a sitcom, when he was struggling to break into film. He wasn't waiting for Hollywood to crown him. He was crowning himself. This self-support gave him the confidence to take risks, to demand better roles, to persist through rejection. He became his own biggest fan first, and the world eventually agreed with his self-assessment. The practice of self-compassion, becoming your own biggest fan, requires developing genuine self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you would show a good friend. This means when you make a mistake, instead of launching into self-attack, you acknowledge the mistake while maintaining self-support. I made an error, but that doesn't make me an error. I failed at this task, but I am not a failure. I am struggling right now, and that's okay. I'm human and I'm learning. Dr. Christine Neff's research on self-compassion reveals 3 components: self-kindness, being warm toward ourselves when we suffer or fail; common humanity, recognizing that imperfection is part of the human experience; and mindfulness, observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment. When you practice all 3, you create an internal environment where growth is possible without self-destruction. You can acknowledge areas for improvement while maintaining fundamental self-support. This isn't about lowering standards or accepting mediocrity. People with high self compassion actually achieve more because they are not paralyzed by fear of failure. They can take risks because they know they'll support themselves regardless of outcome. They can receive feedback because they don't interpret it as an attack on their worth. They can persist through setbacks because they are not wasting energy on self-condemnation. Self-compassion doesn't make you soft. It makes you resilient. The story of the prodigal son illustrates divine compassion that we are meant to extend to ourselves. When the son returns after squandering everything, he expects judgment and has prepared a speech about being unworthy. But the father runs to him with compassion, clothes him in the best robe, and throws a celebration. This parable teaches us to be our own compassionate parent, to run toward ourselves with love when we fail, to celebrate our return to the right path, rather than punish ourselves for having strayed. We should be our own biggest fan, especially in our moments of failure, because that's when we most need support. Creating your personal board of directors, while becoming your own biggest fan, is primarily an internal practice. It's strengthened by creating what I call a personal board of directors, a carefully chosen group of people who genuinely support your growth. These aren't yes people who tell you what you want to hear, but individuals who believe in your potential even when you are struggling to see it. They provide external validation that reinforces your internal self-support. Choose these people carefully. They should be individuals who celebrate your successes without jealousy, who provide constructive feedback without distraction, who see your potential beyond your current performance. Limit this board to 3 to 5 people whose opinions genuinely matter to you. When self-doubt creeps in, these are the voices you allow to influence your self-perception. Everyone else's opinion becomes interesting but not influential. This practice prevents you from seeking validation from everyone, which is exhausting and impossible. When you're your own biggest fan, with a small board of directors supporting you, you are not dependent on universal approval. You can handle criticism because you have internal and selected external support. You can take risks because you are not trying to please everyone. You can be authentic because you are not performing for applause. Jesus demonstrated this with his inner circle. Out of thousands of followers, he had 12 disciples. Out of 12, he had 3, Peter, James, and John, who were his inner circle. Out of 3, he had 1, John, who was described as the disciple whom Jesus loved. Jesus didn't seek validation from the crowds. In fact, he often withdrew from them. He had his own relationship with the Father, internal support, and a small circle of trusted supporters, external reinforcement. This model shows us that becoming your own biggest fan doesn't mean isolating yourself, but rather being selective about whose voices you allow to influence your self-perception. Step 4, visualization, your transformed future. See yourself as your own champion. Close your eyes for a moment and envision yourself 1 year from now, having fully embraced being your own biggest fan. See yourself waking up and immediately thinking, "Good morning, champion. What amazing things will we accomplish today?" Instead of, "Oh, another day to get through." Watch yourself looking in the mirror with appreciation for the person staring back. Not perfect, but perfectly worthy of support. Feel the confidence that comes from knowing that regardless of what happens today, you have an unshakable ally in yourself. Visualize yourself in challenging moments, but instead of self-criticism, you are coaching yourself through. Okay, that didn't go as planned, but we've handled worse. Let's figure out what we learned and try again. See yourself celebrating victories without minimizing them. I did that. That was me. I'm proud of myself. Watch yourself taking risks you previously avoided because you know you'll support yourself regardless of outcome. This isn't fantasy. This is the real future available to you when you commit to being your own biggest fan. Picture your relationships when you're your own biggest fan. You are no longer desperately seeking validation because you are providing it for yourself. You can receive compliments graciously because they align with your self-perception. You can handle criticism constructively because it doesn't threaten your fundamental self-worth. You attract people who match your self-respect. You give love freely because you're not trying to earn it. Your relationships become choices rather than needs, preferences rather than desperation. Imagine your professional life when you're truly your own champion. You apply for positions you previously thought were above you. You negotiate confidently because you know your worth. You share ideas without fear of judgment because you've already validated them yourself. You recover from professional setbacks quickly because you don't interpret them as personal failures. You become known as someone with quiet confidence, someone who doesn't need to prove themselves because they are already proven to themselves. The ripple effect of self-championship. Visualize the impact on others. When you become your own biggest fan, your children grow up seeing a parent who model self-respect and self-support. They learn that it's normal to celebrate achievements, to speak kindly to oneself, to maintain self-worth through challenges. They inherit confidence not as a gift, but as a learned behavior. They don't have to spend decades in therapy and doing self-criticism because they never learned it in the first place. See your influence expanding as others notice your transformation. Colleagues ask what's changed about you. Friends comment on your increased confidence. People are drawn to your energy because self-support is magnetic. You become a permission giver. Your example shows others that it's possible to be your own biggest fan without being arrogant. You inspire others to stop waiting for external validation and start generating internal support. Envision yourself 5 years from now, after consistently being your own biggest fan. The compound effect has transformed you into someone you might not recognize today. You've achieved goals you previously thought impossible, not because you became more capable, but because you stopped sabotaging yourself with criticism. You've built relationships you once thought you didn't deserve. You've created a life aligned with your values rather than your fears. You look back and realize that the moment you became your own biggest fan was the moment everything changed. The biblical vision of transformation is captured in Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When you become your own biggest fan, you are literally renewing your mind, replacing old patterns of self-criticism with new patterns of self-support. This isn't surface change, it's fundamental transformation. You become a new creation, not in religious terms only, but in practical, observable reality. The person who emerges from consistent self-support is fundamentally different from the person who lived in self-criticism. The alternative future, the cost of staying the same. Now visualize the alternative, continuing as your own worst critic for the next 5 years. See yourself in the same cycles of self-doubt and self-sabotage. Watch opportunities pass by because you didn't believe you deserved them. Feel the weight of accumulated regret as you realize you've been your own biggest obstacle. Experience the pain of watching others achieve what you could have achieved if you had just supported yourself instead of attacking yourself. Picture the relationships damaged by your inability to receive love, the promotions not pursued due to self-doubt, the dreams abandoned because of self-criticism. See the generational impact as your children inherit your self-rejection, perpetuating cycles of not enoughness. Feel the exhaustion of fighting yourself daily, the depletion of being at war with the person you can never escape. Yourself. This isn't visualization to punish you, but to awaken you to the cost of not changing. Consider the deathbed perspective. Imagine yourself at the end of life. Looking back, what will you regret more? The chances you took that didn't work out, or the chances you didn't take because you weren't your own fan? The love you gave that wasn't returned, or the love you withheld from yourself? The celebrations you had that might have been too much, or the achievements you never celebrated at all? The perspective of mortality clarifies what matters. You'll regret self-criticism far more than self-support. Step 5. Action. Your transformation starts now. The immediate implementation protocol. The transformation to becoming your own biggest fan begins this instant. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not January 1st, right now. Here's your immediate action protocol. First hour action. As soon as this video ends, go to a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and say 3 specific things you appreciate about yourself. Not generic affirmations, but specific, true appreciations. I appreciate that I showed up to watch this entire video because I am committed to growth. I appreciate that I handled that difficult situation at work yesterday with grace. I appreciate that I'm still trying despite all the setbacks. Feel the discomfort and do it anyway. Today's mission: before you sleep tonight, write yourself a fan letter. Address it to yourself and write as if you're your own biggest supporter, writing to encourage you. Include specific achievements, growth you've noticed, challenges you have overcome, and potential you see. Be generous with praise, specific with examples, and genuine with encouragement. This letter becomes the first entry in your victory inventory. The 7-day challenge. For the next 7 days, implement the catch and convert practice. Every time you catch yourself in self-criticism, immediately convert it to self-support. I'm so stupid becomes I'm learning and growing. I always mess up becomes I'm human and improving. I'm not good enough becomes I'm exactly where I need to be on my journey. Keep a tally of how many times you catch and convert. Watch the number increase as your awareness grows. The 30-day transformation protocol. Commit to the 30-day self-fun protocol. Week 1. Foundation. Focus on awareness and interruption. Notice your self-critical thoughts without judgment. Simply observe how often you attack yourself. Begin the practice of interruption. When you notice self-criticism, simply say stop and take a deep breath. You are not yet replacing the thoughts, just interrupting the pattern. Week 2. Replacement. Now begin actively replacing self-criticism with self-support. For every critical thought, create a supportive alternative. Keep a journal of these replacements. Notice which areas of life trigger the most self-criticism and prepare specific supportive responses for these triggers. Week 3, celebration. Add daily celebration to your practice. Each day, celebrate 3 things. Something you accomplished, no matter how small. Something you learned, even from a mistake. And something you are. A quality or characteristic you appreciate. Share one celebration publicly, on social media, with a friend, or in the comments of this video. Week 4, integration. Make being your own biggest fan your new normal. Create rituals that reinforce self-support. Morning affirmations, evening gratitude for yourself, weekly review of victories, monthly fan letters to yourself. By day 30, self-support should feel more natural than self-criticism used to feel. Document your 30-day journey. Take a selfie on day 1 and day 30. Notice the difference in your eyes, your smile, your energy. Share your transformation in the comments. Use our community fan to connect with others on this journey. Your story will inspire someone else to begin their own transformation. The public declaration. In the comments section below, make your public declaration. Write, starting today, date, I am becoming my own biggest fan. My first act of self-support is specific action. This public declaration serves multiple purposes. It creates accountability, inspires others, and most importantly, it's an act of self-support in itself. You are publicly claiming your worth and your commitment to supporting yourself. Share 3 specific ways you are going to practice being your own biggest fan this week. Be detailed and actionable. For example, 1. I will celebrate completing each work task by giving myself a mental high five. 2. I will write down 3 victories each night before bed. 3. I will replace I have to with I get to in my self-talk. Your specificity will help others understand how to implement this practice in their own lives. Tag 3 people who need to hear this message. We all know someone who is brutal with themselves, who minimizes their achievements, who can't accept compliments. Tag them with a message about why you think they are amazing and why they deserve to be their own biggest fan. Your target might be the catalyst that changes their life. Sometimes people need external permission to begin internal support. Subscribe to this channel not for mere content consumption, but for consistent transformation. Every video is designed to reinforce your journey of self-support, to challenge the old patterns of self-criticism, to provide weekly reminders that you are worthy of your own championship. The subscribe button is your commitment to prioritizing the most important relationship in your life, the one with yourself. Hit the notification bell because transformation requires consistency. You need regular reminders to maintain your practice of being your own biggest fan. Life will try to pull you back into old patterns. Stress will trigger self-criticism. Setbacks will tempt self-attack. These weekly notifications are your support system, arriving exactly when you need encouragement to maintain your new practice of self-support. Like this video if it has resonated with you, and more importantly, share it with 5 people who need to hear this message. Don't share it generically on your timeline. Send it personally to 5 specific people with a note about why you thought of them. Tell them what you admire about them and why you believe they deserve to be their own biggest fan. Your personal touch might be what makes them actually watch and implement rather than just scroll past. The accountability system. Create or join a self-fan support squad, a group of 3 to 5 people committed to becoming their own biggest fans. Meet weekly, virtually or in person, to share victories, practice celebration, and remind each other of your worth when self-doubt creeps in. This isn't group therapy. It's group transformation. Create a text thread where you share daily victories, celebrate each other's celebrations, become external fans while developing as internal fans. Establish accountability checkpoints. Every Sunday, report to your squad. How many times did you catch and convert self-criticism? What victories did you celebrate? Where did you struggle with self-support? What's your self-fan goal for the coming week? This accountability keeps you on track. When motivation wanes and old patterns resurface, create consequences and rewards. If you go a full day as your own biggest fan, reward yourself with something you enjoy. If you slip into extended self-criticism, contribute $5 to a fund that the squad will use for a celebration dinner once everyone completes the 30-day challenge. Make it real, make it matter, make it sustainable. The Legacy Action Plan. Your commitment to becoming your own biggest fan isn't just about personal transformation. It's about breaking generational patterns and creating new legacies. Here's your Legacy Action Plan. For parents, implement family victory dinners where everyone shares a win from the week. Model self-celebration in front of your children. When you make mistakes, show them how to maintain self-support while taking responsibility. Teach them that being their own biggest fan is normal, expected, and healthy. For leaders, start meetings by having everyone share a recent victory. Normalize self-celebration in your organizational culture. Share your own victories without false modesty. Create an environment where being your own biggest fan is seen as strength, not arrogance. Institute victory boards where team members can publicly celebrate their achievements. For educators, teach students to be their own biggest fans from an early age. Create classroom practices around self-appreciation. Replace criticism-based motivation with support-based encouragement. Show students how to maintain self-worth while striving for improvement. Make self-support part of the curriculum, not just an add-on. For everyone, become a walking demonstration that it's possible to be your own biggest fan without being insufferable. Show through your life that self-support creates more success, not less. Prove that you can be ambitious and self-compassionate, driven and self-accepting, achieving and self-celebrating. Your life becomes the evidence others need to begin their own journey. Here is your championship moment, the sacred decision point. We've reached the end of this journey together, but in truth, this is not an ending. It's your beginning. Everything I've shared over these 100 minutes has led to this singular moment of decision. Right now, in this instant, you stand at the crossroads between two possible futures. One where you continue the exhausting cycle of self-criticism, and another where you step into the power of being your own biggest fan. This choice, and it is a choice, will determine not just your success, but your satisfaction. Not just your achievement, but your peace. Not just your external life, but your internal experience of living. The decision to become your own biggest fan is not a luxury for when life gets easier. It's a necessity for life to become bearable and beautiful. It's not something you do after you achieve success. It's what enables success. It's not a reward for being perfect. It's the support you need while being imperfect. This decision is sacred because it honors the divine spark within you, the potential planted in you that requires your support to fully bloom. When you choose to be your own biggest fan, you're not just choosing self-support. You are choosing to fulfill your purpose, because purpose requires internal advocacy to overcome external obstacles. Remember King David's declaration in Psalm 139. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. David wasn't waiting for others to recognize his worth. He was declaring it himself. Grounded in divine creation, he was being his own biggest fan, not from ego, but from understanding his inherent value. This same inherent value exists in you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are worthy of your own support, your own celebration, your own advocacy. The question isn't whether you deserve to be your own biggest fan. The question is whether you'll choose to be. The time is now. No more waiting. If you are waiting for permission to be your own biggest fan, this is it. If you are waiting for the right time, it's now. If you are waiting to feel worthy, understand that worth isn't earned through achievement, but recognized through acceptance. Every moment you delay being your own biggest fan is a moment of life lived at partial capacity. Every day you postpone self-support is a day of dreams deferred. The compound interest of self-advocacy starts accumulating the moment you begin, and every day you wait is exponential growth lost. There will never be a perfect moment to start being your own biggest fan. You'll never feel completely ready. There will always be reasons to maintain self-criticism, mistakes you've made, goals you haven't reached, ways you've fallen short. But being your own biggest fan doesn't require perfection. It requires decision. It's choosing to support yourself, not because you've earned it, but because you need it. It's extending to yourself the grace you would extend to anyone else in your situation. The world needs you to be your own biggest fan, not for selfish reasons, but for service reasons. When you're supported internally, you can support others externally. When you're filled with self-compassion, you overflow with compassion for others. When you believe in yourself, you can believe in possibilities that others can't see. Your self-support isn't just about you. It's about everyone whose life you'll touch when you're operating from fullness rather than emptiness. You are matching orders. Before you close this video, before you move on to the next thing, take these specific actions. Make your declaration in the comments below. Publicly declare, I am officially becoming my own biggest fan. Starting with specific action, make it real, make it public, make it powerful. Share your why. Write why becoming your own biggest fan matters to you. What will change? What becomes possible? Who else will benefit? Your why becomes your anchor when old patterns resurface. Take immediate action. Do one act of self-support right now. Send yourself an encouraging text. Write a victory on a sticky note and put it on your mirror. Say something supportive to yourself out loud. Start immediately. Share this message. Send this video to 5 specific people with personal messages about why they deserve to be their own biggest fans. Be specific about what you admire about them. Subscribe and engage. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and commit to engaging with each video. This isn't passive consumption, it's active transformation. Start the 30-day challenge. Commit publicly to the 30-day self-fun challenge. Document it, share it, live it. The final rally cry: you were not created to be your own worst enemy. You were not designed to tear yourself down. You were not meant to live in constant internal conflict. You were created to be your own advocate, your own supporter, your own champion. The voice in your head was meant to be your coach, not your critic. Your internal dialogue was designed to build, not destroy. Your self-talk was intended to empower, not diminish. From this moment forward, you are no longer allowed to be harder on yourself than you would be on someone you love. You are no longer permitted to dismiss your achievements while magnifying your mistakes. You are no longer authorized to speak to yourself with anything less than the respect, encouragement, and support you deserve. These are not suggestions. These are your new or non-negotiables. The revolution starts in your mind. The transformation begins with your words to yourself. The change originates in choosing to be for yourself instead of against yourself. This isn't a small shift. It's a complete reversal of how most people live. You are choosing to swim upstream against a culture that normalizes self-criticism. You are choosing to be countercultural by being kind to yourself. You are choosing to be revolutionary by being your own biggest fan. The benediction of self-championship. As you leave this message and enter your new life as your own biggest fan, receive this benediction. May you have the courage to support yourself when the world doesn't understand you. May you have the wisdom to celebrate your progress without waiting for perfection. May you have the strength to maintain self-compassion through failures and setbacks. May you have the vision to see your worth independent of your performance. May your internal voice become your greatest encourager. May your self-talk become your source of strength. May your self-support become unshakable, regardless of external circumstances. May you become so secure in being your own biggest fan that you inspire others to do the same. You are worthy of your own support. You are deserving of your own celebration. You are capable of being everything you are meant to be when you stop tearing yourself down and start building yourself up. The crowd you've been waiting for starts with you. The applause you've been seeking begins with your own hands. The validation you've been craving is yours to give yourself. Go now and be your own standing ovation. Be your own victory parade. Be your own Hall of Fame. Be your own biggest fan. The world is waiting for who you will become when you finally, fully, unapologetically support yourself. Your championship begins now. Thank you for joining me on this transformational journey. Remember to like this video to help others find this message. Comment your commitment to becoming your own biggest fan. Share with 5 people who need to hear this. Subscribe for weekly transformation. Hit the bell for consistent reminders to support yourself. Your journey to becoming your own biggest fan starts now. See you in the comments where we are building an army of self-champions. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of your own support, your own celebration, and your own championship. Be your own biggest fan. The world needs what you'll become when you do. Thank you.